I'm your host, Scary Pops, and everybody loves a good scare. So let's get into it.
Hey, who are you? How come you're in here?
A family of four, two young children and their parents were traveling on the road. All of a sudden, their car broke down. The parents said, "You guys, we're gonna have to go out and look for help. So we're gonna leave the radio on just in case you guys get bored." But by nightfall, the parents, they didn't return. And the children, they were sitting in the darkness with the music. And they grew alarmed. All of a sudden, they heard on the radio, "This report just in. Please stay inside. Lock your doors. There's a killer on the loose." The kids looked at each other terrified. They didn't know what to do. Their parents had not come back. All they could do was sit and wait. The silence outside the car was just absolutely still. Until all of a sudden, suddenly, they heard knocking on the car roof above them. The knocks would grow louder and faster. They were unable to bear it any longer. The children all of a sudden opened up the car doors and fled in terror. And the eldest dared to turn around and see the source of their fear. On top of the car was a large man who was bouncing two objects on top of the vehicle. It was the heads of the parents. Daisy Clark had been in a coma for over a month when the doctor declared her dead. She was buried on a cool summer day in a small cemetery about a mile from her home. "May she always rest in peace," her husband said. But that was not how it turned out. As late that night, a grave robber, armed with a shovel and a flashlight, began to dig her up. As the earth was still loose, he quickly reached the coffin and opened it. His hunch was right. Daisy had been buried wearing two valuable rings, a diamond wedding ring and another studded with a brilliant ruby. The thief knelt down and reached inside the coffin to take the rings, but they were completely stuck on Daisy's fingers. He decided the only way to get them off was to cut off her fingers, but when he took out his knife and began to saw the flesh, it began to bleed, and Daisy began to twitch. Suddenly she sat up. Terrified, the thief scrambled to his feet, accidentally knocking his flashlight, which went out. Then it was dark, and all he could hear was Daisy emerging from her grave. The thief stood frozen, clenching the knife in his hand. And on seeing him there, Daisy covered herself and asked, "Who are you?" Hearing the corpse speak, he was terrified, so the robber ran, and she just shrugged and kept walking, not bothering to look back. But fear and confusion set in as the thief fled in the wrong direction, and he fell headfirst into the open grave onto his own knife. And as Daisy walked home, the thief bled to death.
I was driving a long route to deliver the last pizza for the night. It was well into the early morning hours, sometime around 2 a.m. I live in a pretty small town, working for a local pizza shop that was one of the only places offering delivery, given that most of the town is spread far out. The road I was on was a not so often used side road that conveniently went from one side of the town to the other without any stoplights or intersections. It was mainly empty, going through the forest that surrounded our town. As I drove along, something with my car started to feel different. I checked my gas, but it was at half, and no other icons were showing up on my dashboard. I figured it was nothing and ignored it, but the further down the road I got, the more my car began to struggle. It was bumpy, shifting back and forth as I tried to maintain speed, until it just stopped accelerating. The car rolled forward and I slowly turned it off to the side of the road, stopping it halfway in the grass. With some annoyance, I looked again at my dashboard as I tried to turn the car back on, but had no luck. I rubbed my eyes with frustration, then calmly got out and looked for any signs of damage on the outside of the car. I didn't see anything, but it was a really old car, and honestly I didn't even know what to look for. As I was out there, I looked down the road, not seeing anything but fog and trees. But when I looked back the way I came from, I saw a figure far out standing in the fog on the other side of the road. I got back in my car and called up one of my coworkers, who was also a friend of mine, and asked if he could do me a favor and pick me up. He agreed, though it wouldn't be for another 30 minutes. I thanked him, then called the customer to let them know my situation and apologized for the inconvenience. They were nice about it, so all I was left to do was sit back and wait. After a second, I remembered that figure that I'd seen, so I checked my mirrors, but saw nothing. I didn't see anybody on the side of the road or by the trees, although it was really dark and foggy. I sat back again and opened the box of pizza, grabbing a slice for myself while I waited. Over time though, an eerie feeling continued to grow on me. Being out on this empty road with very limited vision just started to freak me out. I could only see a few feet into the forest before it was complete darkness, and the fog on the road seemed to only get more dense as time went on. I waited for 30 minutes, keeping my eyes open the whole time and checking the mirrors. But then I heard something. Footsteps, getting more noticeable as the sound came closer, coming from the darkness within the forest. I stared at the empty fog, seeing a man appear near one of the trees. He walked directly up to my car, knocking on the window and sending a friendly smile at me.
Sorry, I can't roll the window down,
I said through the glass, not really sure what else to say. The man said nothing, but then casually tried to open the door before walking around to the back. I looked in the mirror as he stood by the trunk, seeming like he was trying to hide for a second as he shifted around with something in his hands. And it was just then that headlights came through the fog from down the road. The man watched as the car slowed down and started to pull in behind me. Then he ran into the forest, losing my sight in the fog. My friend seemed to have noticed the man as well, because he was very cautious about approaching my car. We ended up leaving my car behind, and it was on the ride back with my friend that he told me the man was holding a gun before he ran into the forest. We called the police and had a tow truck pick up the car, which happened to have been broken into and looted. It turned out that the gas meter was stuck in the middle, and it was actually an empty tank. But concerning the man, there's been nothing on it. I don't know what he was trying to do. I mean, he obviously robbed the car, but what would he have done to me if he had tried to while I was inside? And why was he out there on that empty road in the middle of the night anyway? All I can say is that if my friend hadn't shown up when he did, I'm pretty sure I would have never been seen again.